I have a
Well,
que-
you know, I'm really happy to see you're reading labels because that's what Scott talked about last week. And so kudos to you for looking at the label on these packages. And if you recall what Scott had to say, that is if the sodium is less than the total number of calories in the serving, it's probably an okay choice. So what are the calories per serving on that box?
Calories are 25.
Per serving?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's above what would be considered a really great choice, but like Ken says, whole lot better than what you could get if you're buying the usual brands. And if you make it yourself, that would probably be the best option. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
What about if you just boil your veggies and get the broth from that? You have all the minerals and all the vitamins in it and no salt.
You're absolutely right. And if you listen to Gregor's videos, that's what he does. He uses some, and not only him, but many people, they just take the vegetables they're using and then they kind of heat them up and make a broth out of it. And it works.
That's what I do, but I have to watch that I get enough salt. I get problems, not enough salt.
Yeah,
But-
so the problem with not enough salt is oftentimes not enough iodine. You need to make sure you get enough iodine, and the enough salt, you know, you need very little really of salt. Some people may need slightly more depending on their body balance. But
Yeah.
remember, it's 1,500 milligrams a day is what we're kind of shooting for, which is about 2/3 of a teaspoon or less.
Little
Got it.
spoon, that's it. Yeah, I gotta watch it, but yeah, today I didn't take my kelp, and I think that would do good.
Okay.
You reminded me, thank you.
Just a thought on the broth. It says unsalted on the package. That means they don't add any salt. Sodium comes from the other ingredients.
There's
Correct.
always salt in it, but they don't report it.
Because it says on the label, natural flavors, and that could be anything.
I'm surprised that every supermarket sells that brand, even Walmart.
0.5 milligrams of salt, they don't have to report it. It goes as no salt. They still have salt in it.
Okay, so we're having fun tonight. Do we have any other input or questions? If we have any new people, if you want to share how you found out about the classes and what you might hope to get out of them, or just even how you just found out about the classes. Anybody new? Just unmute yourself and say hello.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was to say, hey, this is Megan Richter here. I'm from Positive Community Kitchen. I am new to this group, but not new to this topic. We found out about the program or this class through Ed Van Schreiber, who is maybe a regular, it's my understanding. I don't know if he's here today, but he's a volunteer at the kitchen that we work at together, delivering free healthy meals to people who are sick. So we subscribe to what sounds like a very similar philosophy here, and I'm here to learn more and to hear what's going on in the community of food education too in our community. So really thrilled to be a part and looking forward just to learning and observing today.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Thank you for coming and speaking up. And Ed, thank you for referring. That's very kind of you, and we're thrilled to have you.
So a quick message to Ed. So here's the answer of the question I started to bring up last time. And anyway, Positive Community Kitchen lady, I forgot what your name is. Megan?
Yes, Megan. Yep.
I've met you twice. You came and gave demonstrations.
Yes, Ken, I recognize your face. Aha. Yes,
Excellent.
I
Well,
know
we
where I met
haven't-
you. Yes.
We haven't had that support group in, well, almost 3 years, and we really
Mm-hmm.
missed it. We're really hoping that they'll start having those again, and you can bring some more really good food for us.
That sounds good. Only if Ed's willing to help me with the demos.
It's the group I'm talking about, Ed, is prostate. Oh, I can't remember what we call our group, but it's put on by the Oregon Urology Institute, and it's just a support group for prostate cancer patients. And like this, I just really get a lot out of it. But like I said, we haven't had it since COVID started. So we look forward to seeing you there, both you guys, Megan and Ed.
Yeah, and thanks for helping me connect the dots. I look at familiar faces all the time, and it's hard for me. So really appreciate you piping up.
Thank you.
Great. So other than Megan, is there anybody else who is new to the group or chiming in for a first time?
My name is Meg also, and I'm new to the
Hey.
group. I've been eating clean for quite a while, and I was looking for a plant-based doctor and found the information about this group, so here I am.
Well, welcome, and we're really thrilled to have you. Scott Wagner and myself do these sessions every single week. They're archived on our website. So if you can't make it to a class, you can kind of check it out, or if the time doesn't work out for you. But I also want to share with the two new people that we have a wealth of plant-based providers in the Eugene Springfield area. I was personally not aware of this until just several months ago when Scott Wagner and Eric Colgrove thought maybe it would be a good idea to search around and see if there are other people who had similar mindset. And sure enough, with a bit of, just talking around, there are 30 Eugene plant-based providers. There's a group, it's going to be applying for a nonprofit status pretty soon. And I think there's even more than 30 right now with a few new additions, but I'm really excited about that. And I hope you are too, that this is really catching on and the wave of the future. Scott, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just if you go onto the class website, we have a website link to the Eugene plant-based providers, and you can see our profiles there and all the community events we're doing. And so check it out. So livelifestylemedicine.com is the class website, and then eugeneplantbasedproviders.com is the Eugene plant-based providers website. And we have pediatricians and myself and Charlie, and we have cardiologists and dietitians and physical therapists and general surgeons. We have all areas of medicine works growing and growing. So come check us out.
So one more request for any new players who would care to introduce themselves and how you found out about the class. Okay, if there are, you can speak up later on. Some people are shy, but actually I'm always thrilled to hear when we get new people who jump on, and I encourage them to at least look at a couple classes to see whether it might be beneficial for them or anyone that they might know. We also want to let you know that we do more than just these classes and do more than the events. We also provide one-on-one. A lady called me this morning when I was eating breakfast. I eat a late breakfast. It was about 10:30 or 10:45. And she says, "Is this Dr. Ross's office?" And I said, "Well, it's Dr. Ross. I don't actually have an office." She says, "Well, I heard that you'll do some counseling about transitioning my diet." I said, "Yes, I will. And I'll call you back when I get done with breakfast lunch." So I called her back about a half hour later, and we had about a half hour talk together where I shared Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen app and answered a few of her questions, and she says, I just needed a little more motivation to get back on track. Thank you. And maybe she'll call back again, maybe not, but we provide that for free. And we also have medical students, at least one right now, Lisa Chick, who will do one-on-one counseling and consult with us. And that way the medical student learns, and you get kind of opinions from the med student and from one of us. So just wanted you to be aware of that.
Does the counseling take any money?
No, the counseling takes no money.
Okay.
Just about everything we do is no money, which is
Okay.
kind of bizarre, isn't it?
It's unusual in this world. Nothing is free anymore.
The remuneration, the payment that Scott and I receive from doing these classes is the testimonials and the good results that you are getting. Like, for example, Dolly, in the beginning of the meeting, told us about the results she had, and maybe she could care to share with the group now that we're twice as many people. Would you dare or care to share what you told us before the meeting got started?
Oh, sure. For
Okay.
you guys, anything. Hank and I started this class, I think it was about December 7th. I had many medical issues, and my doctor told me about Scott's class, and then I met Charlie through Scott. I've always had high blood sugar, just hard. It was having a terrible time getting it down. This was my last best hope for to become healthy again. And my blood sugar, or my A1C, went from, I think it was about 6.8 or 6.9 at that time. And this afternoon, the average now is down to 113.
Wow.
I am so pleased because, yeah, or 5.5, I'm sorry. The
Your
glucose,
hemoglobin A1C is 5.5.
5.5, and the average glucose average is 113. And so I couldn't be happier. I didn't used to like beans at all. And my grandma would say, you can get used to hanging if you hang long enough. And now I love beans. But I like what this diet has done for me, and I feel better. And if my arthritis would go away, I'd be on top of the world.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Dolly. And I'm hopeful that you will get improvement in your arthritis, and maybe that pain will go away too. Just keep at it. Give yourself body time. I must say there are a number of other people who have great stories to tell. Renal function improving, lowering blood pressure, getting off of pills, losing weight. This group is filled with those people. And I want to tell you, September the 14th, from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, I'm going to be doing a session for the medical students at Lebanon. And this session is nutrition in medicine. And the first session that we're going to do is going to be called, I'm going to lead that session, and it's going to be called Real People, Real Stories. And so what I want to do is share short stories, just like Dolly just did, share that with the medical students so that they can have an understanding of the importance of food as medicine. And then after that session of a number of people sharing their stories, the medical students will have a chance to maybe ask questions of us, and we can kind of share what's happened. I think that would be most beneficial. We're going to have medical students involved in sharing their stories also. And for anyone who's willing to participate, I ask you to consider that. It's not going to be a long, drawn-out thing. You could do it in a minute, 2 minutes, just a quick look. This is the benefit that I've had, the difficulties, the easiness that I've had, or the difficulties I've had doing this. Share whatever you want from your heart as to, what you would want them to know, because they're going to be your future doctors. And if we relay this to them, they'll be better doctors. And then after that, we're going to follow with John McDougall the next month. And then it's going to be Scott Stoll from the Plantrition Project. And then it's going to be Chef AJ in December, and on and on. We do this every month. But for September 14th from 5 to 7 p.m., if you're at all available and you're willing to just share your experience, if you could send me a little email or let me know somehow. And so how can you do that? I'll put my email in the chat room, and then you can just send me a blog that says, hey, I'm up for that. Just remind me. Because we all tend to forget.
I
What
have a
day-
question.
Yes,
Is that a Zoom meeting or in person?
it's a Zoom meeting, so no one has to be exposed to anything. It would be just a meeting like we're doing right now.
Charles, what what day is that, the 14th?
September the 14th, I believe, is a Wednesday.
Doesn't work for me, I'm sorry.
And that's okay. If it doesn't work, I understand it, but there are enough other people who it will work for. And I'm going
Yeah.
to put Katanya Ross at msn.com. I'm putting it in the chat right now. Just send me a little note, and we'd love to have you participate. It's really fun listening to the medical students and what their questions are. And I think you'd really find it fun. No one's going to be put on the spot. I'm going to be there. I hope Scott's there. I think he's planning on trying to come. We'll be there to field the questions from the students, but if they have a specific thing that they wanted to ask you about how difficult or easy it was, you know, we want to kind of let you participate too.
Yeah, I'll be
Okay.
there, and I'll tell my story too.
Great.
I would like to attend that as well.
Okay, send me a little email. I'm going to put everybody, and I'll send you a little note and say, we have this much time. We have this many people. So keep it to 2 minutes or 5 minutes or however many people sign up. We'll see. Okay, I'm excited. Anything else that anybody else wants to share before we get started on dementia? Ken, I see your hand.
The Western University that you are involved with, and Lisa, are they producing DOs and MDs, or are they pretty much just into the holistic naturopath kind of thing?
So they are, it's the DO school. It's the osteopathic school in Lebanon. It's the osteopathic school in Pomona, California. And it's a medical school, another DO school in Idaho. And let me explain to you, DOs have equal rights and privileges as MDs in every state in the union. We do the same neurosurgeries, the same cardiovascular surgeries. There are DO hospitals, but now the staffs are mixed. There used to be a huge difference between DOs and MDs. DOs used to just do manipulation. Some DOs do what you title naturopathic, but you know, one of the tenets is treating the whole patient. But you know, there are MDs who do that also. So right now there is the residency trainings are identical. They do the same residency trainings, MDs and DOs these days. So if a doctor doesn't have an interest in treating the whole person, they're not going to be different between an MD and a DO. But the older DOs, they used to go out to the country and take care of the people there rather than the city. They weren't allowed in the military back when I graduated from college in the 70s. Times have changed significantly. And you can consider DOs and MDs having pretty much equal training, with DOs doing a little bit more manipulation, hands-on muscle bone kind of diagnosis.
You guys have kind of made it clear that they're trying to keep people from getting sick instead of filling them full of medicine, trying to make them better.
Well, yeah, but there are MDs who are doing that too. Take Eric Colgrove and take the cardiologist. Who is it, Scott? Who attends the pediatric cardiologist? She's an
Oh.
MD. Isn't
Oh, Misty Carlson and Tushar Tuliani.
Yeah, those are MDs, and they are promoting what we're promoting also. And so think of MD and DO like LLB and JD. Those are 2 law degrees. They have equal rights and privileges, just different letters after their name. Right now, MD-DO, very similar, but not every DO is going to be promoting what we're promoting. Yet, not yet, but we're working on it. What else?
Oh, I always have plenty of questions, but I don't want to hog the screen.
All right, well, let's get to your questions. Let me get to Alzheimer's first, and then or dementia, and then we will come back. How's that, Ken?
I forgot what I'm here for.
Yeah, that is very cute. I love that. Okay.
I'm having so much trouble with memory loss. Yeah, I'm trying to make a joke out of it because there's not much I can do about it.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about what you can do. I've already got people who are interested in making the class, and one who's interested in just attending without speaking up. And of course, you can attend without speaking up. I'll give you the invite the week that it's going to happen. So we don't want anyone to feel forced to participate. Okay, with that said, I'm gonna start with some videos, but before I do that, I'm gonna go to my answer man, Scott Wagner, who sent me a little email and a little update on the Alzheimer's solution, the book that he kind of took some, what you would call cliff notes, or just a little bit of an evaluation of some of the important concepts. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to share a few of his notes with you because I think they're important. The book was written, The Alzheimer's Solution, by Dean and Ayesha Sherzai. They're 2 neurologists who are really plant-based. I love listening to them. And if you get a chance to listen to them, I'd encourage you to do that either on YouTube or wherever you can hear them at a meeting. They say that 90% of Alzheimer's cases can be prevented. 90% prevented. That doesn't mean that once you get it, you're going to be able to reverse it easily, but it means that if you make certain lifestyle choices that are healthy, you can prevent yourself from likely developing this. There is 10% of the people have a strong genetic risk for cognitive decline, but you can delay the disease by about 10 to 15 years by making these lifestyle changes. And it says, would you put the authors in the book? And it's it's Sherzai, Sherzai. Okay, it's on the class website under books for the class. Scott wrote here. So go to the website, livelifestylemedicine.com, go to the book section, and it's in there. They talk about a neuro kind of mnemonic, where nutrition is so very important, and eating a whole plant food diet is what they are promoting. They talk about exercise under E. They talk about unwinding and restoring and optimizing, and that would go under, dealing with how you're dealing with stress in your life, and having good social support and getting good sleep, and all the tenets we've talked about that really will lead you on a path to health. They said that spouses of Alzheimer's patients are 600% more likely to develop the disease themselves. Wow, that's pretty impressive. It's, makes you want to think about caring for being a caregiver for a patient with Alzheimer's. It really can kind of literally suck the life out of you. And it's important you continue with very good lifestyle choices. I'm going to skip the genes and that sort of thing, but I am going to say there that they have mentioned 4 pathways to Alzheimer's, and the pathways are oxidation, inflammation, glucose dysregulation, and lipid dysregulation. And what does this all mean? It means that, you know, we talk about antioxidants. Well, you know, when you're eating a lot of animal products, you're getting breakdown of the food substances into free radicals. The free radicals cause like rusting or inflammation within the body. So you want to be eating a lot of antioxidants. Hopefully you're just eating mainly antioxidants and plants and not eating foods that are going to be causing a lot of those free radicals. So if you're eating plants, that's going to be the healthiest option. Inflammation has been shown to increase risk for diabetes and heart trouble and cancer and arthritis. We've talked about this over and over. And a diet that's anti-inflammatory, like a plant-based diet, is so very important. And remember, when you feed your body, your microbiome, the bacteria in your large intestine, when you feed them foods, the good bacteria will feed you back chemicals that are anti-inflammatory, like butyrate. If you starve your bacteria, they won't give you the anti-inflammatory compounds. And by starving them, that means you're not giving them their food. And what is their food? Anybody? Fiber. Fiber is the food for your microbiome. And where does fiber come from? Does it come from any animal product? No, it only comes from plants. Animals have bones. Plants have fiber. So think of it in that term. The more fiber you add to your diet, the less inflammation you're going to have. You're going to be healthier. Then there's the glucose dysregulation. That has to do with insulin resistance. When you're eating a higher fat diet, you develop insulin resistance. We went over this, Scott and I both did, in terms of when there's too much fat in the cell. When insulin comes to open up the cell to let the sugar in, the cell says, no, I got enough sugar in here, enough fat, I've got enough energy. I don't want to let any more sugar in. So your sugars go up. It's not the sugar you're eating, or it's not the carbohydrates, I should say, the complex carbohydrates you're eating that's causing the diabetes. It's the increased amount of fat within the cells that's leading to insulin resistance, that's leading to the diabetes. Many people do not understand this. They think it's just carbohydrates, so they want to avoid eating fruit, or they want to avoid eating potatoes because they break down. But when they have their natural fiber in place, the sugar doesn't get absorbed as rapidly. You don't develop the insulin resistance. You don't have the fat. So keep that in mind. And then lipid dysregulation is the excess cholesterol and excess triglycerides and those things, which I don't want to harp on this all. We want to get to a few videos. I want to say one more thing. Sleep apnea increases the risk of Alzheimer's by 70%. If there is any chance that you have sleep apnea, meaning you're kind of obstructing your airway at night, you've got complaints from your significant other that you're snoring loudly or that you stop breathing, or if you're fatigued throughout the day, you don't have a normal amount of energy, consider talking this over with your doctor to maybe get a sleep study and they can do sleep studies now. You don't necessarily have to go into the lab and sleep in some foreign facility. I think there's ability now to just
Mhm.
monitor yourself at home for the night.
I just had it done. Yeah. And it's done at home. And
And
I don't have sleep apnea.
okay, well, good. So it was easy to do?
Yes, very easy.
All right, well, that's
I-
good to hear.
I just get wired up, go to bed, and next morning bring the device back, and they set it up, and they
So-
shut it. on.
So I encourage everyone who is having problems with fatigue or chronic fatigue or getting tired, sleepy, don't have the energy that you want, to talk to your doctor about maybe getting a home sleep test. It's
I-
just a consideration.
I had a sleep study done, but I had to sleep in their facility. They said that the results that they get are better than what you would get in the sleep study place.
Well, I'm not an expert on this topic. And I can say, I'm sure there are differences of opinion, and new technologies are going to be there are going to be certain providers who are skeptical about switching to home monitoring. But just as there were providers skeptical of doing home blood pressure monitoring, but that's the trend for the future as I see it. I don't know. Any thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, just there's different testing and for different levels of obstruction, and sometimes they just do the oxygen monitoring overnight as a screening tool, and then if you fail that, then they bring you in for the sleep study in the facility.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Ken, you had your hand up.
Well, just backing up a little bit, I thought when you were talking about fiber that it's a good time to put a plug in for my favorite video that I watch over and over again because it's so entertaining.
Okay.
That's Jeff Novak on calorie density. I just love that video. He is so funny, and he just makes the greatest points. Like he shows you kernels of corn and cornmeal, and then he keeps saying it wasn't the carbs. I highly recommend people watching that if you haven't watched it before. Jeff
Ken,
Novak.
as much as you love watching that video, I love your enthusiasm about promoting it.
Well,
Good for you.
that's sort of my thing. Enthusiasm.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to go on to, I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to go to the first video because we have a few videos to share with you tonight. I'm going to start out with a Gregor video, and it's going to be, let's see. Where is the video that I was going to share? It must be somewhere on here. And it's a Flashback Friday, and it's a Alzheimer's and atherosclerosis of the brain. Let's take a look at this.
In 1901, Augusta was taken to an insane asylum in Frankfurt, Germany by her husband. She was described as a delusional, forgetful, disoriented woman who could no longer carry out her homemaking duties. She was seen by a Dr. Alzheimer, and was to become the case that made his a household name. On autopsy, he described the plaques and tangles in her brain that would go on to characterize the disease, but lost in the excitement of discovering a new entity, a clue may have been overlooked. He described arteriosclerotic changes, hardening of the arteries within her brain. We typically think of atherosclerosis in the heart, but atherosclerosis involves virtually the entire human organism, our entire vascular tree. And one of the most poignant examples of the systemic nature is the link between coronary artery disease, degenerative brain disease, and dementia. Back in the 70s, the concept of cardiogenic dementia was proposed. Dementia generated from the cardiovascular system. Since the aging brain is highly sensitive to lack of oxygen, since heart problems are so common, it was easy to imagine that's how dementia could result. And now we have a substantial body of evidence that strongly associates atherosclerotic vascular disease with the #1 cause of dementia, Alzheimer's disease. Autopsy studies, for example, have shown that individuals with Alzheimer's disease have significantly more atherosclerotic narrowing of the arteries within their brain. This is what our cerebral arteries should look like: open, clean, allowing blood to flow. This is what atherosclerosis in our brain arteries looks like: clogged with fat and cholesterol, closing off the arteries, restricting blood flow to our brain. What kind of brain arteries do you want in your head? Normal resting cerebral blood flow. The amount of blood flow circulating within our brains is about a quart a minute, but we lose about 0.5% a year, so by age 65 we may be down 15–20%, but this doesn't necessarily affect brain function as we have a built-in buffer. However, this age-related decline in cerebral blood flow can become critical to brain cell survival if an additional burden further lowers that flow. This reduction of blood flow can starve the brain of oxygen, cause silent little mini-strokes, brain atrophy, shrinkage, the cumulative effects of which appear to play a pivotal role in accelerating and augmenting the development and evolution of Alzheimer's disease. If you look at the amount of atherosclerosis in the arteries that specifically supply blood to critical memory and learning centers of the brain, this is the amount of severe atherosclerosis one sees in healthy, non-demented controls, compared to those with Alzheimer's disease. In light of such findings, some have even suggested the disease be reclassified as a vascular disorder. This is good news, though, because atherosclerosis is potentially reversible. These findings were confirmed in 2 larger studies, over 1,000 autopsies each, which found the same thing. Atherosclerosis in the brain is significantly more frequent and severe in those with Alzheimer's disease. This suggests that strategies proven to delay the progression of artery disease, like plant-based diets, may be useful in preventing or treating Alzheimer's disease. Of course, autopsy studies are a little late for that, so to assess the impact of intracranial arterial narrowing on the progression from mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease, researchers followed 400 folks with cognitive impairment for 4 years, using CT angiography, special CAT scans, to evaluate the amount of brain artery blockage. The cognition of those with the least atherosclerosis in their heads remained pretty stable over the years, but those with more cholesterol buildup got worse, and those with the most blockage rapidly declined. And the same with the ability to carry out activities of daily living. And it doubled the progression to full-blown Alzheimer's disease. An inefficient blood supply to the brain has very grave consequences on brain function. But does treatment of vascular risk factors like high blood pressure and high cholesterol actually make a difference? We didn't know until now. 300 patients with Alzheimer's, and those with all their vascular risk factors treated showed significantly less decline, less kind of slowed progression of their disease than those who went untreated. It is said that the goal of medicine is to provide patients with hope, and when there is no hope, with understanding. Well, for the first time in the history of this disorder, we have the chance to provide Alzheimer's patients with hope.
Interesting.
Okay, so that's the first video. Any thoughts about that? So before we go on to thoughts with that, then I'm going to go to the second video, which is brain healthy food. And remember the question that he asked you? What kind of arteries do you want? And for those of you who have attended a number of classes with us, you understand that there are 2 studies in the world literature that demonstrate reversal of the clogging in the coronary arteries with a plant-based diet. Only 2, no other way of eating has ever been demonstrated to actually, by angiographic analysis, has been demonstrated to reverse that clogging. So if it does that in the heart arteries, do you think it likely does it in the brain arteries too? Yes, potentially. Same way with erectile dysfunction. We've had several patients who I've received notices from their significant other partners that they were very happy about the plant-based diet, leading them back to a normal sex life. So there are so many benefits to making healthy food choices that maybe you might want to ask yourself, like Dr. Greger recommended, what do I want my arteries to look like when you're starting to eat some food? Is this going to help me keep my arteries clean or improve them, or is this going to make it worse? And then you can make an informed decision as to whether you eat that or not. Let's go on to the next video, then I'll stop again and we'll go on to the next. This is brain healthy foods to fight aging.
There's an extensive scientific literature describing the positive impact of dietary plant compounds on overall health and longevity. However, it's only now becoming clear that the consumption of diets rich in plant foods can influence neuroinflammation, brain inflammation, leading to the expression of cytoprotective, cell-protective, and restorative proteins. Just over the last decade, remarkable progress has been made to realize that oxidative stress and chronic low-grade inflammation are major risk factors underlying brain aging, so no wonder antioxidant and anti-inflammatory foods may help. The brain is especially vulnerable to free radical attack oxidative stress due to its high fat content and its cauldron of high metabolic activity. You don't want your brains to go rancid, so you'd think one of the major fat-soluble dietary antioxidants like beta-carotene would step in. But the major carotenoid concentrated in the brain is actually lutein. The brain just preferentially sucks it up. For example, if you look at the oldest old, like in the Georgia centenarian study, recognizing that oxidation is involved in age-related cognitive decline, they figured dietary antioxidants may play a role in its prevention or delay, so they looked at 8 different ones, vitamin A, vitamin E, on down the list, and only lutein was significantly related to better cognition. Now, in this study, they looked at brain tissue on autopsy. By then, it's a little too late. So how could you study the effects of diet on the brain while you're still alive? I mean, if only there was a way we could physically look into the living brain with our own 2 eyes. There is, with our own 2 eyes. The retina. The back of our eyeball is actually an extension of our central nervous system, an outpouching of the brain during development. And right in the middle, there's a spot. This is what the doctor sees when they look into your eye with that bright light. That spot, called the macula, is our HD camera, where you get the highest resolution vision, and it's packed with lutein. And indeed, levels in the retina correspond to levels in the rest of your brain. So your eyes can be a window into your brain. So now we can finally do studies on live people to see if diet can affect lutein levels in the eyes, which reflects lutein levels in the brain, and see if that correlates with improvements in cognitive function. And indeed, significant correlations exist between the amount of macular pigment, these plant pigments like lutein, in your eye, and cognitive test scores. You can demonstrate this on functional MRI scans, suggesting lutein and a related plant pigment called zeaxanthin promote cognitive functioning in old age by enhancing neural efficiency, the efficiency by which our nerves communicate. Like, check out this cool study on white matter integrity using something called diffusion tensor imaging, which provides unique insights into brain network connectivity, allowing you to follow the nerve tracks throughout the brain. And researchers were able to show enhanced circuit integrity based on how much lutein and zeaxanthin they could see in people's eyes, further evidence of a meaningful relationship between diet and integrity of our brains, particularly in regions vulnerable to age-related decline. So do Alzheimer's patients have less of this macular pigment? Significantly less lutein in their eyes, significantly less lutein in their blood, and a higher occurrence of macular degeneration where this pigment layer gets destroyed. The thickness of this plant pigment layer in your eyes can be measured and may be a potential marker for the beginnings of Alzheimer's. Well, let's not wait that long, though. We know macular pigment density is related to cognitive function in older people. What about during middle age? One apparent consequence of aging appears to be loss of some aspects of cognitive control, which starts out early, in mid-adulthood, but not in everybody, suggesting maybe something like diet could be driving some of the differences. Here's a measure of cognitive control showing younger, on average, do better than older adults. But older adults who have high macular pigment, lots of lutein in the back of their eyes, do significantly better. These results suggest that the protective role of carotenoids like lutein within the brain may be evident during early and middle adulthood, decades prior to the onset of more apparent cognitive decline later in life. You can take 20-year-olds and show superior auditory function in those with more macular pigment in their eyes. Look, the auditory system, our hearing, like the rest of our central nervous system, is ultimately constructed and maintained by diet, and is therefore not surprisingly sensitive to dietary intake throughout life, all the way back to childhood. Higher macular pigment is associated with higher academic achievement among school children. You can look into a kid's eyes and get some sense of how well they may do in subjects like math and writing. This finding is important because macular lutein is modifiable and can be manipulated by dietary intake. OK, so where is lutein found? The avocado and egg industries like to boast about how much of these macular pigments they have in their products, but the real superstars are dark green leafy vegetables. A half a cup of kale has 50 times more than an egg. A spinach salad or a 50-egg omelet. And the earlier, the better. Pregnant and breastfeeding women should definitely be checking off my daily dozen green servings, but it's also apparently never too late. While some age-related cognitive decline is to be expected, these effects may be less pronounced among those eating more green and leafy. But you don't know for sure until you put it to the test, which we'll explore next.
Okay, so I'm going to stop there because he had some significant information. Lutein, I hope you found that interesting about looking at the back of the eyes and measuring the amount of pigment, which is mainly composed of lutein. And so if you have improved cognitive function or less cognitive function if you have lower levels of this pigment. And where do you get it?
Kale.
Yeah, dark green leafies. Kale is probably the best source, but there were spinach and arugula and collard greens and chard. There's a lot of dark green leafies that you could take a couple handfuls and a half a day, because that's approximately the amount, 2 to 3 handfuls of those greens throughout the day will give you probably an adequate dose. Most people are not getting enough. They're not getting enough calcium because they're not eating enough dark green leafies. So that's putting them at a little risk for thinning of their bones. And so, but dementia is an important issue.
Goji berries, Charlie.
Goji berries. What about goji berries in terms of lutein? I'm not sure what the lutein is in the
They
goji.
have a high capacity to direct that word.
Your microphone.
Both
Your
them and
microphone's,
the one that starts with Z.
yeah, your microphone's cutting out a little bit. And we do eat goji berries every day, Christine and I. She adds them. But I'm, not sure what their effect is. They have good antioxidant effects, I'm sure. There's some problem with your
I have some stuff I could send you.
I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what it's going on. It was great this afternoon, but there is some issue with your microphone. So keep working on it. And we'll go to the next person and see if there's anyone else who has a question or some input. Any thoughts?
I just think it's really, really exciting. Pointing
Okay.
to we're responsible for our own health.
Yeah, that's one of the things that these classes bring home in terms of people understanding that we can make a difference in our health. We don't have to go to a doctor to get a pill to make us healthy. We can make food choices that are healthy and keep us from having to go to the doctor. Now, that's not true of every medicine. You know, if you're low on thyroid and you're getting enough iodine in your diet and you really need thyroid because you had a viral illness which knocked out your cells from producing it or whatever the cause, autoimmune disorder, then those pills are important. But so often you go to the doctor and you have high blood pressure or diabetes or you're overweight and there's a pill for every ill. And if one doesn't work, then you get a second and a third and whatever. And listening to the science can help you understand that your personal choices can actually bring you health. It's a very positive message.
Doctors won't like what you just said.
Who won't like it?
They'd like to distribute the pills.
Yeah, the doctors. Well, you know, I am one of them, and I was one of those guys until 10 years ago, until I changed my own life. So,
Good for you.
yeah, you know, I'm doing penance for that right now. Let's see what else. I'm going to kind of run through the chat room, the conversation, to see if there are any questions that we can answer. So, what's the correlation of sleep apnea with 70% risk of Alzheimer's? Is it being overweight? How does diagnosis of sleep apnea change anything? Decreased oxygenation leads to decreased blood flow, which leads to perhaps inflammation or a body response to kind of correct this, raise your blood pressure in an attempt to bring more oxygen to the area. So as your body tries to raise your blood pressure is going up. That's causing your arteries to be stiff over time, leading to more plaque buildup. It's sort of like leaving the hose on in your garden with the nozzle on it. Instead of shutting it off and releasing the pressure, if you leave that pressure in all the time, high blood pressure can lead to long-term complications. So that's what I would say sleep apnea might do, raising your blood pressure, leading to stiffer arteries, leading to the deposits in your arteries, and lack of adequate nutrition, not enough nitric oxide, as Dr. Esselstyn would say. You don't have enough nitric oxide because you're not chewing enough dark green leafies. And so you don't have smooth running arteries. So that's what I see the connection. Decreased oxygen to the brain and stress on the body. Scott, you said it in very short words. Thank you. And I just repeated it. I hadn't seen that, but it seems like our minds think alike in many ways.
I have a comment about sleep apnea.
Yes.
I'm in the process of being medically diagnosed with sleep apnea so that I can get an oral appliance instead of a CPAP machine from my dentist, who specializes in sleep treatment. And it's a plate that goes on the upper and lower teeth that's quite small, and it moves your lower jaw slightly forward while you're sleeping so that you can breathe and not need a CPAP machine. And it's paid for, if it's a medical diagnosis, then it's paid for almost completely by Medicare.
That's great. Okay, so let's see. Someone asked what the title of that last video was, and it was Brain Healthy Foods. Let's see if I can go back to it. It's Brain Healthy Foods to Fight Aging. So you can go to YouTube and you can look that up. Or you could find it on nutritionfacts.org, 2 sources.
To plant what?
You can go to nutritionfacts.org or you can go to YouTube. There's
Title?
two sources.
Brain healthy foods to plant what?
Brain Healthy Foods to Fight Aging.
Oh, to fight aging, yeah.
Okay. Okay, here we're gonna play another how to prevent, or let's see, how to prevent Alzheimer's with diet. Here's the next one.
What is behind the dramatic increase in dementia in Japan over recent decades? Maybe it's rising obesity rates, or the increases in cholesterol, saturated fat, and iron from increases in animal products and meat. Overall calories just went up about 10% in Japan, whereas animal fat and meat consumption rose 500%, about 10 times the rise in sugary junk. Now, during this time span, rice consumption went down, but the thinking is that rather than white rice somehow being protective, maybe they were just eating something worse instead. It's like when you find fish consumption is correlated with less disease. You wonder if it's because they're eating that rather than some worse meat. If you look across multiple countries, you see a similar pattern, with the most important dietary link to Alzheimer's appearing to be meat consumption, with eggs and high-fat dairy also maybe contributing. There appears to be a really tight correlation between Alzheimer's and per capita meat supply. And then studies within countries uncover similar findings, with Alzheimer's and cognitive decline associated with meaty, sweety, fatty diets, whereas most plant foods were associated with risk reduction. This could be for a variety of reasons. Animal products tend to have more copper, mercury, lead, cadmium, no folate, but contain saturated fat and cholesterol, and pro-inflammatory advanced glycation end products. So many mechanisms that dietary modification may be our best bet for reducing risk of Alzheimer's disease. But how do we know its cause and effect? The evidence that meat consumption is causally linked to Alzheimer's disease, well, there's the strength of the association, the consistency across different types of studies, the fact that the dietary changes preceded the risk of dementia, the dose response, more meat linked to more risk, a bunch of plausible mechanisms. We know meat is a risk factor for other chronic diseases, but there's never been a randomized controlled trial to put it to the test. When you read reviews of the damaging effects of high-fat diets to the brain and cognition, a number of factors are proposed to account for the high-fat diet-induced damage to the brain: oxidative stress, insulin resistance, inflammation, and changes to blood vessels of the integrity of the blood-brain barrier. But these are based mostly on studies of rodents. Yes, high-fat diets can cause energy dysfunction in the brain, based on fancy MRI techniques, but if you're looking at that thinking, "That's so weird-looking brain," that's because those are rat brains. Let me show you 2 sets of human cerebral arteries, the arteries deep inside your skull. These are the brain arteries, on autopsy, of non-demented elderly individuals. Here are the arteries from Alzheimer's patients, clogged nearly completely shut with atherosclerotic plaque packed with fat and cholesterol. With CT scans, you can follow this intracranial artery stenosis, this brain artery clogging over time, and follow the progression from mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease. Those who only had low-grade stenosis were pretty stable over time in terms of their cognitive function and ability to dress themselves in other activities of daily living, whereas those with more clogging started slipping over the years, and those who started out with the most brain atherosclerosis rapidly went downhill, and twice as likely to progress to full-blown Alzheimer's. Chronic consumption of standard Western diets enriched in saturated fat and cholesterol may compromise our cerebrovascular integrity, compromise the blood vessels in our brain. So, of course, drugs are recommended, pharmacological modulation of diet-induced dysfunction, but why not just try to eat healthier in the first place?
So why do I show those arteries a second time? I wanted to make sure that you get the picture. And I think you have the picture. I hope you have the picture of those clogged narrow arteries, which is something that I hope you don't really want. Any other questions, any thoughts before I keep going on into infinity here?
You know, my dad had claudication.
Yeah.
And later on, when he was driving, he asked my mom, which way is it to go home? He forgot where he was. So he ate a lot of meat, and it was after the 1950s that he was enjoying fat and meat, not very much sweets, but a lot of fat, a lot of protein, and it clogged up his brain to the point where I'm glad I wasn't there. It would have upset me very badly. But he always used to be a very, very intelligent man, and he ruined himself with all that animal protein and fat.
Yeah, it's very sad, but part of our culture.
Not mine anymore.
Well, not mine either, but we still live within that culture, so I guess it still is a bit ours.
I'm always been the oddball, so it doesn't matter to me. I do what I feel is best for me.
All right, I'm going to go to the gallery and see if there's any other questions. Hands up. Anybody have any thoughts? Anything that's burning on your mind that you have a question about? I hope that you get some hope out of this, that this is not just something that depresses you, these sessions. I have one more video, which is what you can do to prevent dementia. And it talks about learning a foreign language and some others and the benefits of doing that, and how that can help you adapt. But before I get on to that, it's 13 minutes long, which takes up quite a few minutes. I want to make sure that we answer your questions first, or have enough time afterward to answer them. So going one, go
I
ahead.
have a question. How long does it take to get your cholesterol out of your arteries?
Well, in my personal example, I went from one day when my wife and I made the decision to do totally whole food plant-based to the following day where we took out all of our animal-based products and processed foods and oils and bought nothing but whole plant foods. And in 30 days, my cholesterol went from 240 down to 148. 30 days, never hungry for one day because I was full all the time, filled up with a lot of fiber. So this could be a month, 2 months, 6 months, depends on how you go about it.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. I think I'm on my way.
Good. Anybody else?
Ollie.
Yes, Dolly.
Tink and I have been doing puzzles, for the last, I don't know, how long, 3 or 4
Couple
years.
years. Yeah.
And we don't do it every night, but we've been putting together 1,000-piece puzzles. And for some reason, I think we're doing pretty good in the memory department.
Okay, well, I think that's probably a good activity, doing puzzles, solving problems. They make a point of doing crossword puzzles doesn't really improve your brain function over time. Things that you know, but it's got to be things that you don't know what the solution is. So let's play that video and then we'll come back and ask a few more if you have any more questions. We're going to go what you can do to prevent Alzheimer's. It's a TED Talk.
How many people here would like to live to be at least 80 years old? Yeah. I think we all have this hopeful expectation of living into old age. Let's project out into the future, to your future yous, and let's imagine that we're all 85. Now, everyone look at two people. One of you probably has Alzheimer's disease. All right. And maybe you're thinking, well, it won't be me. Then, okay, you are a caregiver. So, in some way, this terrifying disease is likely to affect us all. Part of the fear around Alzheimer's stems from the sense that there's nothing we can do about it. Despite decades of research, we still have no disease-modifying treatment and no cure. So if we're lucky enough to live long enough, Alzheimer's appears to be our brain's destiny. But maybe it doesn't have to be. What if I told you we could change these statistics, literally change our brain's destiny without relying on a cure or advancements in medicine? Let's begin by looking at what we currently understand about the neuroscience of Alzheimer's. Here's a picture of two neurons connecting. The point of connection, this space circled in red, is called a synapse. The synapse is where neurotransmitters are released. This is where signals are transmitted, where communication happens. This is where we think, feel, see, hear, desire, and remember. And the synapse is where Alzheimer's happens. Let's zoom in on the synapse and look at a cartoon representation of what's going on. During the business of communicating information, in addition to releasing neurotransmitters like glutamate into the synapse, neurons also release a small peptide called amyloid beta. Normally, amyloid beta is cleared away and metabolized by microglia, the janitor cells of our brains. While the molecular causes of Alzheimer's are still debated, most neuroscientists believe that the disease begins when amyloid beta begins to accumulate. Too much is released or not enough is cleared away, and the synapse begins to pile up with amyloid beta. And when this happens, it binds to itself, forming sticky aggregates called amyloid plaques. How many people here are 40 years old or older? Yeah, you're afraid to admit it now. This initial step into the disease, this presence of amyloid plaques accumulating, can already be found in your brains. Now, the only way we could be sure of this would be through a PET scan, because at this point, you are blissfully unaware. You're not showing any impairments in memory, language, or cognition. Yet. We think it takes at least 15 to 20 years of amyloid plaque accumulation before it reaches a tipping point, then triggering a molecular cascade that causes the clinical symptoms of the disease. Prior to the tipping point, your lapses in memory might include things like, why did I come in this room? Or, oh, what's his name? Or, where did I put my keys? Mm-hmm. Yeah, now before you all start freaking out again, because I know half of you did at least one of those in the last 24 hours, these are all normal kinds of forgetting. In fact, I would argue that these examples might not even involve your memory because you didn't pay attention to where you put your keys in the first place. After the tipping point, the glitches in memory, language, and cognition are different. Instead of eventually finding your keys in your coat pocket or on the table by the door, you find them in the refrigerator. Or you find them and you think, what are these for? Okay, so what happens when amyloid plaques accumulate to this tipping point? Our microglia janitor cells become hyperactivated, releasing chemicals that cause inflammation and cellular damage. We think they might actually start clearing away the synapses themselves. A crucial neural transport protein called tau becomes hyperphosphorylated and twists itself into something called tangles, which choke off the neurons from the inside. By mid-stage Alzheimer's, we have massive inflammation in tangles and all-out war at the synapse and cell death. So if you were a scientist trying to cure this disease, at what point would you ideally want to intervene? Many scientists are betting big on the simplest solution: keep amyloid plaques from reaching that tipping point, which means that drug discovery is largely focused on developing a compound that will prevent, eliminate, or reduce amyloid plaque accumulation. And so the cure for Alzheimer's will likely be a preventative medicine. We're going to have to take this pill before we reach that tipping point, before the cascade is triggered, before we start leaving our keys in the refrigerator. We think this is why, to date, these kinds of drugs have failed in clinical trials, not because the science wasn't sound, but because the people in these trials were already symptomatic. It was too late. Think of amyloid plaques as a lit match. At the tipping point, the match sets fire to the forest. Once the forest is ablaze, it doesn't do any good to blow out the match. You have to blow out the match before the forest catches fire. Even before scientists sort this out, this information is actually really good news for us, because it turns out that the way we live can influence the accumulation of amyloid plaques. And so there are things we can do to keep us from reaching that tipping point. Let's picture your risk of Alzheimer's as a seesaw scale. We're going to pile risk factors on one arm, and when that arm hits the floor, you are symptomatic and diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Let's imagine you're 50 years old. You're not a spring chicken anymore, so you've accumulated some amyloid plaques with age. Your scale is tipped a little bit. Now let's look at your DNA. We've all inherited our genes from our moms and our dads. Some of these genes will increase our risk and some will decrease it. If you're like Alice and still Alice, you've inherited a rare genetic mutation that cranks out amyloid beta, and this alone will tip your scale arm to the ground. But for most of us, the genes we inherit will only tip the arm a bit. For example, ApoE4 is a gene variant that increases amyloid. But you can inherit a copy of ApoE4 from mom and dad and still never get Alzheimer's, which means that for most of us, our DNA alone does not determine whether we get Alzheimer's. So what does? We can't do anything about getting older or the genes we've inherited. So far, we haven't changed our brain's destiny. What about sleep? In slow-wave deep sleep, our glial cells rinse cerebral spinal fluid throughout our brains, clearing away metabolic waste that accumulated in our synapses while we were awake. Deep sleep is like a power cleanse for the brain. But what happens if you shortchange yourself on sleep? Many scientists believe that poor sleep hygiene might actually be a predictor of Alzheimer's. A single night of sleep deprivation leads to an increase in amyloid beta. And amyloid accumulation has been shown to disrupt sleep, which in turn causes more amyloid to accumulate. And so now we have this positive feedback loop that's going to accelerate the tipping of that scale. What else? Cardiovascular health. High blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, smoking, high cholesterol have all been shown to increase our risk of developing Alzheimer's. Some autopsy studies have shown that as many as 80% of people with Alzheimer's also had cardiovascular disease. Aerobic exercise has been shown in many studies to decrease amyloid beta in animal models of the disease. So, a heart-healthy Mediterranean lifestyle and diet can help to counter the tipping of this scale. Okay, so there are many things we can do to prevent or delay the onset of Alzheimer's, but let's say you haven't done any of them. Let's say you're 65. There's Alzheimer's in your family, so you've likely inherited a gene or two that tips your scale arm a bit. You've been burning the candle at both ends for years. You love bacon, and you don't run unless someone's chasing you. Let's imagine that your amyloid plaques have reached that tipping point. Your scale arm has crashed to the floor. You've tripped the cascade, setting fire to the forest, causing inflammation, tangles, and cell death. You should be symptomatic for Alzheimer's. You should be having trouble finding words and keys and remembering what I said at the beginning of this talk. But you might not be. There's one more thing you can do to protect yourself from experiencing the symptoms of Alzheimer's, even if you have the full-blown disease pathology ablaze in your brain. It has to do with neuroplasticity and cognitive reserve. Remember, the experience of having Alzheimer's is ultimately a result of losing synapses. The average brain has over 100 trillion synapses, which is fantastic. We've got a lot to work with. And this isn't a static number. We gain and lose synapses all the time through a process called neuroplasticity. Every time we learn something new, we are creating and strengthening new neural connections, new synapses. In the nun study, 678 nuns, all over the age of 75 when the study began, were followed for more than 2 decades. They were regularly given physical checkups and cognitive tests, and when they died, their brains were all donated for autopsy. In some of these brains, scientists discovered something surprising. Despite the presence of plaques and tangles and brain shrinkage, what appeared to be unquestionable Alzheimer's, the nuns who had belonged to these brains showed no signs of having the disease while they were alive. How can this be? We think it's because these nuns had a high level of cognitive reserve, which is a way of saying that they had more functional synapses. People who have more years of formal education, who have a high degree of literacy, who engage regularly in mentally stimulating activities, all have more cognitive reserve. They have an abundance and a redundancy in neural connections. So even if they have a disease like Alzheimer's compromising some of their synapses, they've got many extra backup connections, and this buffers them from noticing that anything is amiss. Let's imagine a simplified example. Let's say you only know one thing about a subject. Let's say it's about me. You know that Lisa Genova wrote Still Alice, and that's the only thing you know about me. You have that single neural connection, that one synapse. Now imagine you have Alzheimer's. You have plaques and tangles and inflammation and microglia devouring that synapse. Now when someone asks you, hey, who wrote Still Alice? You can't remember because that synapse is either failing or gone. You've forgotten me forever. But what if you had learned more about me? Let's say you learned 4 things about me. Now imagine you have Alzheimer's and 3 of those synapses are damaged or destroyed. You still have a way to detour the wreckage. You can still remember my name. So we can be resilient to the presence of Alzheimer's pathology through the recruitment of yet undamaged pathways. And we create these pathways, this cognitive reserve, by learning new things. Now, ideally, we want these new things to be as rich in meaning as possible, recruiting sight and sound and associations and emotion. So this really doesn't mean doing crossword puzzles. You don't want to simply retrieve information you've already learned, because this is like traveling down old familiar streets, cruising neighborhoods you already know. You want to pave new neural roads. Building an Alzheimer's resistant brain means learning to speak Italian, meeting new friends, reading a book, or listening to a great TED Talk. And if despite all of this, you are someday diagnosed with Alzheimer's, there are 3 lessons I've learned from my grandmother and the dozens of people I've come to know living with this disease. Diagnosis doesn't mean you're dying tomorrow. Keep living. You won't lose your emotional memory. You'll still be able to understand love and joy. You might not remember what I said 5 minutes ago, but you'll remember how I made you feel. And you are more than what you can remember. Thank you.
So, I've listened to that a few times and always enjoyed listening to her. I don't know that we've shared that in the classes before. I forgot. I could go back and look.
Excuse me.
Okay, any thoughts from anyone?
Yeah, I think what's new to me is they always do the crossword puzzles and it doesn't do any good. It just makes you remember what you know already, but you need to learn new things.
Yes.
And That's what keeps my mind sharp. I try to keep it like a muscle, always using it. And I'm 83 years old, but people tell me I'm sharp like a tack.
Very good. Very good. All right.
Oh, it seems like I forgot so much that I'm learning it over again. Is that the same thing as learning what you already know?
I don't think so. I've done that multiple times in my life. I've learned and unlearned. When you don't use certain knowledge, you kind of can lose it, and then you learn it again. I would not say that that's abnormal.
I
But
feel like sorry.
but if you find your keys locked away in your refrigerator somewhere, you might want to be asking yourself, do I need an evaluation? So if that's not happening to you, you're probably doing well. But the statistics of 50% of people when they're getting 85 doesn't sound that old to me. You know, I'm 73, going to be 74 next month. So I don't feel quite like the old person that she is referring to.
No.
But I get it. You know, I am older than I probably wish to think I am. I'm going to keep enjoying each day.
One thing I've been doing is I love quilting, and I love the process of cutting out shapes and putting them together. You never know what it's going to really look like. I do a lot of quilt tops, but I don't finish them. My table's not big enough.
It sounds like a good activity. You know, you're having to solve problems and work on how things fit and where they go, and that's pretty good. Sort of like a language in itself. Any other thoughts from anybody?
Well, I think crossword puzzles, am I muted? Okay. I think crossword puzzles are good for me because I don't know anything. So I have to research and find the answers. And that has got to eliminate amyloid beta accumulation.
Okay. So if you don't know the answers, you're right. If you're having to look things up and do research, I think you have a good point.
Travel will probably help you too when you don't know the area yet. Maybe go someplace where you've never been with a car before. Different things make your mind expand.
Yes.
I think that.
So we learned a little bit about dementia. Let's see, this says vegan cheeses. I'm looking in the chat here. And vegan meats, vegan berries, examples of processed high-fat vegan food. So yeah, so for those people who got the message that eating lower fat in your diet is an important concept, be careful about just using vegan foods, because you can have highly processed vegan foods which are not the healthiest choices. We call it junk food vegan. And so try to eat foods as they're grown in nature rather than processed. She did mention Mediterranean diet in the TED Talk, and you must understand that the medical world is geared toward a bit of compromise. The Mediterranean diet is definitely healthier than the standard American diet, but it hasn't been demonstrated to actually reverse heart disease. And it's felt to be a good compromise between doing a whole plant food diet versus doing the standard American diet. So there are some people who are just absolutely not going to make the leap into totally plant-based foods. And so the Mediterranean option is probably the best alternative at this point in time. Now, if you were having chest pain, you were having uncontrolled diabetes, chest pain, and someone told you need to get a cardiac catheterization or a bypass, or you had diabetes totally out of control, I would encourage you to eat a totally whole plant-based food as opposed to the Mediterranean diet because of the extra fat that's associated with it.
The Mediterranean diet has a lot of olive oil in it, and Dr. McDougall said no olive oil. And I think I do better without the olive oil. I don't have the chest pain anymore.
Yeah. So I tend to follow what McDougall has to say.
I like the recipes better than the other one.
So it said, would you up a few questions in the chat? Would you up a few? The vegan high-fat foods was a response to the chat question. Can you give examples of vegan comfort foods? Oh, okay. So I need to go up a little bit. Vegan comfort foods are what McDougall says are foods that people eat, your food. It's potatoes, it's rice, it's beans. These are comfort foods for a number of people. So those are whole plant foods as grown in nature. And so he likes to use the term starches. Starch is the comfort food. For me, dessert is a comfort food. I love the sweet of fruit, and I have dessert at every meal. I have fruit, 1 or 2 servings at just about every meal. And so comfort to one person may be not so much comfort to another. But potatoes, rice, beans, squash.
Not to
Now,
me.
we've left out greens, the dark green leafies. They may not be comfort foods, but they sure are healthy foods. And you don't want to leave them out completely. You want to be incorporating them. And that's why Gregor encourages you to have 3 servings of greens, one of them cruciferous. If you haven't downloaded Dr. Gregor's Daily Dozen app, it's a free app. You grab your phone, you go to the App Store, and you plug in a search for Daily Dozen. You download it for free. You may have to put in your Apple password. You might not have to. And you're on your way toward seeing a variety of foods that give you a lot of choices. And you can find your own comfort foods.
Doesn't he have it in the book too?
Who's that? McDougall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Gregor?
McGregor. Yeah. Michael
Yeah,
Gregor.
he has it in the book also.
Okay, then I read it already 4 times.
Okay. The next question is, could a person eat just starches and not so much beans and greens and still see a reduction in their diabetes level? So
No.
you can, I mean, eating just starches leaves out a lot of antioxidants. It leaves out a lot of
It's not balanced.
It isn't. And so I really wouldn't encourage someone to just eat starch, although McDougall places a lot of emphasis and says, okay, you add some beans, add some greens with the starches, and beans are a starch. It's the greens that he places a bit less emphasis on, and Gregor places a little more emphasis, and Esselstyn places a huge amount of emphasis because that's where the nitric oxide comes from, the dark green leafy. So they may have slightly different takes. And I think that's why what I like about Gregor's Daily Dozen, he has kind of, if you follow that, you're going to get a variety of whole plant foods in a proportion that is pretty healthy indeed. So if you don't like eating greens for some reason, figure out how you will like them. If you don't eat them raw, then steam them. If you don't like them steamed or raw, then put a little balsamic vinegar on them, or a little lemon juice or lime or whatever will help you make you, put them in a soup.
Oh, salsa.
Or make salsa. Great.
I love a hot sauce.
And the other benefit of having dark green leafies comes down to calorie density.
Yeah.
And if we're going to go quickly to a chart, that I'm going to share the screen again and go back to tip 1, and we're going to go to the chart I've been using for years. It's not Jeff Novick's, but it came from Jeff Novick. It's Chef AJ's chart, and these are the calorie density, average calories per pound. So the non-starchy veggies are the dark green leafies, cabbage, cauliflower, those sorts of things. They're 100 calories a pound. You're not going to get overweight by eating those. You're going to be getting a lot of antioxidants and healthy nutrition from that. And you can eat as much as you want, get full, you get a lot of fiber. Fruit is a healthy choice. And then the unrefined complex carbohydrates, potatoes, whole grains, legumes, they're 400 to 600 calories. If you keep eating to this side of the red line and eat a reasonable proportion of all these foods, you are going to get vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, the micronutrients, the fiber that you need for your health. And if you eat over here, look at the oils. They're 4,000 calories a pound. Nuts and seeds are healthy, but if you're trying to lose weight, they're 2,800 calories a pound. You better keep your nuts and seeds to 1/4 cup or less if you're trying to lose weight, because that's 150 calories or so. And that's about 10% of the calories you're going to eat for the day. And avocados, they're healthy, but they're not healthy if you're trying to lose weight, because look at their calorie density. It's pretty high. And when people tell me I eat 2 or 3 avocados a day, they're getting a huge amount of calories from that. So be careful of that.
Get 2 oils too.
And the oils, look at how many calories they contain. They're very, and they don't have any fiber. They've been stripped of their fiber. So eat the foods that have it, like whole corn or the olives themselves, if you're looking for oil.
Don't need oil.
All right, I'm going to stop the share. We've had fun tonight. We've been at this an hour and a half. It's gone by mighty fast. I know Scott is probably getting exhausted out there. It's 3 hours difference. And I'm glad that you were able to be with us tonight. And I know many of you have okay, this has been an hour and a half. Ken, you have one last question. Let's see if we can answer it, and then we'll let everybody go.
Well, one right on top of my head is oils. So oils are 4,000 calories a pound. Are vegetable oils just as calorie dense as animal oils?
Yes, all oil is 4,000 calories a pound.
That's what I've been telling people, so I'm glad. Is Chef AJ's chart there on the website, Scott?
I think Scott put Jeff Novick's on there. And it will work also. Okay. Anyway, I've had loads of fun with you all tonight, and happy about the new players, and bring a friend with you the next time or whatever, and we'll do this again.
I have a question.
Okay, one more question.
Can we make it 2 hours next time? I love it. I get so much information out of it. and I
Well-
can't get enough of it.
You could come to the afternoon session from 2 to 3:30 if you're able to and get some more, because I do a session there. I've been standing on this treadmill now for over 3 hours today with classes. And so to make it another half hour onto each class would be 4. I need a little tennis time
Is it on Tuesdays
every Tuesday.
in the afternoon?
In the afternoon, you're more than welcome. We usually have a much smaller group. Like today we had like 4 or 5 people. We oftentimes have 8 or 10. It's a very small group who's been coming over and over again. They're gluttons for punishment. They want it two episodes a day. So you're welcome.
Thank you.
And it's the same link. Anyway, everybody, until the next time, love you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.